High energy costs are not the only challenge confronting this country. Growth is not as high as it should be. Fiscal responsibility remains essential for economic confidence, and it is a path we are committed to. Mr. Speaker, we are at the beginning of a new era, and as we contemplate, that's right, a new era, and as we contemplate this new era, we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that there is huge potential in our country. There are too many barriers for enterprise. We need a new approach to break them down, and that means reforming the supply side of our economy. We can announce that in the coming months we will bring forward a new bill to unpick the complex patchwork of planning restrictions and EU-derived laws that constrain our growth. We need to encourage people to join the labour market. We will make work pay by reducing people's benefits if they don't fulfil their job search commitments. We will provide extra support for unemployed over 50s, and we'll ask around 120,000 more people on universal credit to take active steps to seek more and better paid work or face having their benefits reduced. Now, Mr. Speaker, this brings me to the cap on bankers' bonuses. A strong UK economy has always depended on a strong financial services sector. We need global banks to create jobs here, invest here, and pay taxes here in London, not in Paris, not in Frankfurt, and not in New York. All the bonus cap did was to push up the basic salaries of bankers or drive activity outside Europe. It never capped total remuneration. So let's not sit here and pretend otherwise. It didn't cap total remuneration. So as a consequence of this, Mr. Speaker, we are going to get rid of it. And to reaffirm, we're going to get rid of it. And to reaffirm the UK's status as the world's financial services centre, I will set out an ambitious package of regulatory reforms later in the autumn. On purchases of land and buildings for commercial or new residential development, there will be no stamp duty to pay whatsoever. On newly occupied business premises, there will be no business rates to pay whatsoever. And if a business hires a new employee in the tax site, then on the first £50,000 they earn, the employer will pay no national insurance whatsoever. That is an unprecedented set of tax incentives for business, Mr. Speaker, to invest, to build, and to create jobs right across the country. I can confirm to the House that we're in early discussions with nearly 40 places like Tees Valley, the West Midlands, Norfolk, and the West of England to establish investment zones. And we'll work with the developed administrations and local partners to make sure that Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland will also benefit if they are willing to do so. If we really want to level up, Mr. Speaker, we have to unleash the power of the private sector. Every additional tax on business is ultimately passed through to families through higher prices, lower pay, or lower returns on savings. So I can therefore confirm that next year's planned increase in corporation tax will be cancelled. The corporation tax rate will not rise to 25%. It will remain at 19%, and we will have the lowest rate of corporation tax in the G20. This will plough almost £19 billion a year back into the economy. That's £19 billion for businesses to reinvest, create jobs, raise wages, or pay the dividends that support our pensions. For the tax system to favour growth, Mr. Speaker, it needs to be much simpler. I'm hugely grateful to the Office of Tax Simplification for everything they have achieved since 2010. But instead of a single arm's-length body which is separate from the Treasury and HMRC, we need to embed tax simplification into the heart of government. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I have decided to wind down the Office of Tax Simplification and mandated every one of my tax officials to focus on simplifying our tax code. To achieve a simpler system, I will start by removing unnecessary costs for business. Firstly, we will automatically sunset EU regulations by December 2023, requiring departments to review, replace or repeal retained EU law. This will reduce burdens on business, improve growth and restore the primacy of UK legislation. Mr. Speaker, we can also simplify the IR35 rules, and we will. In practice, reforms to off-payroll working have added unnecessary complexity and cost for many businesses. So, as promised by my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, we will repeal the 2017 and 2021 reforms. Of course, we will continue to keep compliance closely under review. Mr. Speaker, Britain welcomes millions of tourists every year, and I want our high streets and airports, our ports and our shopping centres to feel the economic benefit. So we have decided to introduce VAT-free shopping for overseas visitors. We will replace the old paper-based system with a modern digital one, and this will be in place as soon as possible. This is a priority for our great British retailers, so it is our priority too. Our drive to modernise also extends to alcohol duties. I have listened to industry concerns about the ongoing reforms. I will therefore introduce an 18-month transitional measure for wine duty. I will also extend draft relief to cover smaller kegs of 20 litres and above to help smaller breweries. And at this difficult time, we are not going to let alcohol duty rates rise in line with RPI. So I can announce that the planned increases in the duty rates for beer, for cider, for wine and for spirits will all be cancelled. The increase in employer national insurance contributions and dividends tax will be cancelled. And the interim increase in the national insurance rate brought in for this tax year will also be cancelled. And this cut will take effect from the earliest possible moment, November the 6th. Reversing the levy delivers a tax cut for 28 million people, Mr. Speaker, worth on average £330 every year. A tax cut for nearly 1 million businesses, and I can confirm the additional funding for the NHS and social care services will be maintained at the same level. High tax rates damage Britain's competitiveness. They reduce the incentive to work, to invest and to start a business. And the higher the tax, the more ways people seek to avoid them, or work elsewhere, or simply work less, rather than putting their time and effort to more creative and productive ends. Take the additional rate of income tax. At 45%, it is currently higher than the headline top rate in G7 countries like the US and Italy. And it is even higher than social democracies like Norway. But I'm not going to cut the additional rate of tax today, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to abolish it altogether. From April the 23rd, we will have a single higher rate of income tax of 40%. This will simplify the tax system and make Britain more competitive. It will reward enterprise and work. It will incentivise growth. It will benefit the whole economy and the whole country. And Mr. Speaker, after all, this only returns us to the top rate we had for 20 years, including the entire time the opposition was last in power. Bar 1 month. Too long in this country, we've indulged in a fight over redistribution. Now we need to focus on growth, not just how we tax and spend. We won't apologise for managing the economy in a way that increases prosperity and living standards. Our entire focus is on making Britain more globally competitive, not losing out to our competitors abroad. The Prime Minister promised that we would be a tax-cutting government. Today, we have cut stamp duty, we have allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax and national insurance for millions of workers. We are securing our place in a fiercely competitive global economy with lower rates of corporation tax and lower rates of personal tax. We promised to prioritise growth, Mr. Speaker. We promised a new approach for a new era. We promised to release the enormous potential of this country. Our growth plan has delivered all those promises and more.